Hey guys, and welcome back to part 2 of our Creating Trims in Substance Designer tutorial. For those of you just joining us, my name is Javier Perez, and I'm currently a senior material artist at PlayStation. I've been in the industry for about 9 years now. In this video, we're just going to continue from lesson 1 where we created our first trim texture and made it more of a stone kind of brick material. And in this lesson, we're going to take that same layout and we're just going to change some of the parameters and create a new trim texture that can be used in a completely different environment. For this one, we're going to focus on more of a sci-fi kind of metal work with some bolts and some different panels. So let's get started. So to begin, I'm just going to open our old package from our last demo. So I'm just going to open up a trim demo here. Cool. So what I'm going to do here is the first thing I want to do is I want to keep our original trim intact. So I'm just going to duplicate this guy and keep it in the same trim demo package. So I'm just going to hit copy and I'm just going to hit paste. And I'm going to rename this to Trim Demo 02. Let's keep that at 02. Cool. So the first thing I want to do is pretty much just get rid of the main noise and the cracks that we have going. So what we can do is, I think this was the last, I think right before here. I think this is where most of the noise was starting to get implemented. So let's actually go back and just make this our final connection. And there's a cool node inside of Substance Designer that gets rid of everything that isn't connected. You can go onto the little toolbar here and just hit clean. And there we go. So all the nodes that we aren't using are pretty much deleted. So it's a nice way to quickly optimize your graph. So the next thing I want to do to change this guy up is I'm actually going to get rid of the brick patterns and I'm going to integrate maybe just a bigger sort of panel work here. So let's just start with that. So for the time being, I'm just going to do a shape with a bevel and just move it into place. And then I'm going to continue to remove some stuff from the other parts of the graph. So I'm just going to go to transform. This guy here, I'm going to do a bevel. And I'm going to do, on the bevel, I'm actually going to do a angular. So move this guy over here. Nice. Okay. Gonna see how this is looking right now. And let's just actually take this transform and move it down a little bit. Trying to see where exactly it's. Here we go. I'm actually gonna take down the distance of this. There we go. So I just want something small. Okay, cool. Again, I'm just going to move it into place like we were in the original. So just kind of move it here. Okay. This looks like it'll work. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of these bricks. I'm going to get rid of this kind of floral pattern that we added later on. So let's take this away. Move it to here. Okay. Get rid of these guys. And I'm also going to get rid of this pattern. But I'm going to leave the... for this guy, I think we can just do something super quick for this guy. So what I can do is maybe we can make a cool, interesting pattern here. So let's go ahead and let's see what we can do. Maybe something that's more sci-fi. So let's just take a regular, I'm just going to do like a more of a capsule kind of shape here. So I'm going to take a disc and I'm just going to scale it down. And then I'm going to going to actually move this guy over a little bit. I'm actually going to scale it down even more so here. So just something like this. And move it to the side. And then I'm going to do a mirror grayscale. That way it's going to flip on the other side. Cool. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to duplicate the shape. That way the proportions are still the same. But I'm going to actually change it to a square. And I'm going to do a blend. We might have to do a transform here, but we'll see right now in a second. I'm just going to do an add. There we go. It's just a little bit. So what I can do is just take this one and just move it into place. Cool. All right. So let's actually take this guy. And let's just see what happens when we plug in this guy into our tile generator. I just want to see what will happen. Okay. Cool. So we got what we needed. But we have it set to extrude because on the height it's going in the white value. So what we can do is let's do a invert here. And see what this gives us. Cool. I also like on this one, because we did an invert and because the tile generator isn't exactly at 100, we're getting these nice cut lines. So that's a nice little feature here that we just got randomly. Nice happy accident on this guy. So the one thing I do want to do though is actually add a lip around this guy so we can just do an edge detect and integrate that more. And maybe we can actually push these cut lines just a little bit more to give us some more width on them. So I'm just going to move this over to the side. Bring down the randomness. And then I'm going to do a blend. So I did mention, so I noticed that the white value on here is at a complete, the way this node is set up, the white is at the peak. So no matter what, we're not going to be able to add this kind of lip on it because if we do an add, it can't find it essentially because it's on the highest peak on the white value. So what I can do here is I'm actually going to take a levels and bring that down a little bit. So I'm just going to take it down. This guy, cool. Now when I go through the different, we'll be able to find when that works. So there we go. This is what I was looking for. So now we're able to mess with the opacity here and just kind of see it pop up here. So let's plug this guy in. There we go. So that's looking pretty cool. Maybe we can squash it down just a bit so it's not stretched. But I think the stretching is happening because because of the tile generator, just the way it's being set up here. The first thing I want to do, though, is I'm going to try to scale this guy so we could get some more kind of cuts going on here. A little bit more interesting here. Maybe we can also mess with the height offset. Cool. Let's actually... So it looks like this transform is doing something where I was moving into place. I kind of just want these to kind of sit like right in the middle and not have an extra lip in there. So I'm just going to scale these guys up just a bit and try to align them as best as I can. Again, I'm just going to keep moving them, stretching them upwards. And I want to let the mask that we have plugged in do the work as far as cutting out the rest of these guys. Cool. So that's looking pretty cool. Let's try to get rid of this pattern as well to change it up and give us something a little bit more interesting. Okay. what we can do here is, again, we can just do the same thing we did over here. We'll just add a simple panel and then later add some cuts to it. I just want to get rid of all the patterns that we had originally first. So I'm just going to move this guy into here. Okay, and then the transform is looking for it elsewhere. There it is. Cool. So what we can do here is we can start stretching it downwards. So let's go back on the X. Maybe we can actually move it into place. So what I can do is just try to match it to the same size as our mask that we're using here. Cool, it looks like it found it. So I just gotta move it into place. Okay. I'm also gonna squash it just a little bit more. That way we're getting the bevel on the bottom showing up as well. So there we go. Now it's starting to pop up here. Cool. So what's the last thing we want to do? I want to get rid of this one, but the cool thing about this one is we do have a lot of curved kind of trims here. So if I actually go into our tessellation and turn this guy on, just going to bump this guy up, scale. So now you can kind of see the different values and how our trim is going to be extruded within the height. On this guy, we do have a lot of curved values, which I want to get rid of. But the cool thing is that on the height node, we're just going to try to look for those areas and just kind of angle them out a little bit. So right now, this is kind of curved. This is pretty good what we're looking for, but maybe we can angle this other side out as well. So let's actually try to get... I'm just going to take this guy and then try to angle him in here. There we go. Same thing with this guy. Yeah, there we go. So now I can just pretty much get rid of these angles and just play more so with the different... So now instead of having these nice curved angles, we're having like pretty sharp edges, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So now we can actually make more of a kind of bevel and just a hard surface that we can mess with. So I'm just trying to move them into somewhere that'll work for us. So it's nice is that this gives us a nice little preview of what's going on in the 3D view. So that's pretty cool. Okay. The one thing I am noticing is that I don't like how extruded this guy is, so I'm just going to go back in the opacity and just lower it just a bit. Great. One other thing is on this guy, I think these bevels are a little bit too strong, so I'm just going to go in here and lower the bevel amount on this guy. So let's go back into here and maybe we can mess with the distance here. Something just that's a little bit tighter. I think that's pretty good. And then same thing with this guy. As we're bringing down the distance, you can kind of pretty much see it live, what's happening here. Like that's pretty good. Okay, cool. So now from here, this is, now that we have pretty much everything removed from our old trim, we can kind of just start going crazy and adding our cut lines and whatnot into our trim texture. So let's go ahead and do that. So to get started, let's just go ahead and start adding some nice cut lines to break up these surfaces to have some nice kind of almost mechanical cut lines or sci-fi panels. So let's start with this guy at the top first. One thing I did notice was I'm actually not the biggest fan of this indent here. So what we can do is we can just get rid of it completely and possibly add something there a little later. So I'm just gonna get here and just keep that there. Cool. Yeah, actually, trying to see if I can still salvage it some way. Maybe there's a way we can integrate some sort of pattern in here. Let's keep it for now. And again, because substance is non-destructive, say we did add something in the middle here, we can just get rid of it in case we don't like it. But to add cut lines, what I like to do is I just like to start out with a shape. And I'm just going to scale this guy really inwards on the X. And something like super thin. 0.1 works. We'll be able to still scale it. I'm going to get a bevel. And I can kind of mess with just the amount it's cutting in here. So already as we go in the negative, we can kind of see the exact result that we want. So let's just go ahead and actually plug this guy into a tile generator. Cool. And we're going to change this to image input. And now we have, because we're not changing the Y amount, or, well, because it's a vertical streak, if we change the X or the Y amount, it's still going to be continuous on the tile, which is nice. So let's just go ahead and blend this guy over and see what we get. I want different cut lines for the different areas, so I might have to put a mask on this guy. But for now, let's just see what this is going to give us. Cool. So this is exactly what I'm looking for, and it's even giving us some cool stuff down here that I might want to use. But for now, I just want it showing up on this part. So let's go ahead and use, let's see, which one can we use? We can use this transform 2D and possibly use it as a mask. So I'm just going to grab this guy. And I don't want to cut across our graph just to keep it clean. So I'm just going to do a Alt, and that brings in our dot nodes, and we can just kind of reroute it around. So let's see. So now it's actually just applying to this guy. Now we can go back in the tile generator, and we can actually change the amount on the X amount to just how many we have here. So let's go for something like that. That looks pretty cool. Just something simple, not too many. We're getting this nice cut here. Okay, cool. So let's try to integrate something more into these guys. Maybe we want to do some interesting panel work in here. So let's actually take a shape. And let's go ahead and I think I know what I want to do with this guy. So let's take a shape, maybe something like this. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to add like some pipes or tubing here. So easy way to do that is I'm just going to do a linear gradient. Okay. Just tile this 2 ways. Okay. I'm going to do a edge detect on this guy. Edge roundness, edge width. But I'm gonna actually bring down the levels on this guy. That way we're gonna have a nice lip around it. So let's actually bring down this guy, and we're gonna do a blend. Let's go through different blends here. Like that's exactly what we're looking for. Let's actually bring down the roundness and maybe bring down the width as well. Cool. So now from here, I can actually take these kind of tube-looking shapes, and I'm actually going to use a height blend. That way, it goes in between the white and the gray valley here. So let's just see what we get. Okay, cool. The other thing I want to do is I'm actually going to move this guy up here a little bit. That way, we have a little bit more space to work with. So go back into this guy, and we'll kind of see him pop up here. So right there, you can already see that's enclosed in the white, but it's not going over. So let's just continue to play with the tiling. Cool. And maybe we can do a levels as well. Yeah, something like that. Okay. Let's continue with the tiling here. Something like that. And then we're going to use this original shape to use it as a mask here. But again, I'm going to use the Alt to reroute it and use it as a mask. Cool. That looks interesting. So I'm just going to move these guys over a little bit. I'm going to add a frame. And now what I want to do is just use a tile generator. I'm just going to tile it on these panels right here. So let's see what we get here. Okay, let's do a blend. Better yet, let's do a height blend. That way we have control of how these guys are being blended here. Just going to bring this guy in. Okay. So I do like that it's 3, but let's see if I could do a transform here and just kind of offset them just a bit. So let's go into the offset and perfect, just what I was looking for. The other thing is I'm still going to use a mask for this guy, but also I'm going to bump up or lower the X amount so they kind of get extruded or just kind of stretched a little bit on the Y. And then we could, again, just go ahead and move them into position where we want them. Something like that. Cool. We're going to take, let's take this mask here. And again, using the reroute dot node. Taking the white here. I just wanted to show up on this guy. It looks like when I plug in the mask, it takes it away. So one thing I can do here is just do a blend, take that same mask and just subtract it. So I'm going to go these guys on top, take this reroute node, and see what we can do here. So let's go ahead. Yeah, there we go. That's what we're looking for. Just them on here. And they should pop up right there. Cool. Let's see what this gives us. Yeah, nice. So this is giving us some interesting looking effects here. So you can either make this look like a vent or maybe some tubes. It looks like just the way we're multiplying the tubes, it looks a little strange. So a quick way to go ahead and fix that is we are tiling it quite a bit here. So if we actually just bring down the tiling a bit, so maybe, I don't know, maybe that'll give us a good kind of result. But we can, again, just use a transform here. And I'm just going to bring this guy in. And now we can kind of just, on the height blend, we can go back into our transform and then kind of move into place. So now it looks like we have like 2 pipes here. And it doesn't look as weird, just having a pipe right kind of offset it in the middle like that. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. All right, cool. So again, let's just kind of keep moving on. One thing I did notice while I was rotating around is that these guys are being extruded way too intense. And also, I'm still not really digging these shapes. So let's go ahead and go back and maybe we can change this guy. So one thing I want to try was maybe just squares to give it some more kind of industrial look. That's already looking a little better. Let's look at where, okay, so the reason it's being extruded is because this guy is just so intense. Let's try to find a way to integrate this guy, but not make this as intense. So let's try another blend here. I'm gonna keep this one plugged in, but this is kind of the way I experiment, just so I can see what is going on here. So let's see. What I can do here is actually, I'm going to take another edge detect and I'm gonna invert it here. That way we just get the white. Let's do a blend here. Bring this guy up here. So maybe let's try something like this and see what it gives us here. Again, it's still too intense on the white. So maybe if we bring this down even more. Looks like I just found it on that multiply, possibly. One thing I can do is I can actually, because it's not aligning right on the edge of this guy, I can just do a transform and kind of push it out just a bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to take the transform, going to move this into shape here. Yeah. Maybe something like this. Cool. Again, still a little bit too intense, so I'm gonna see if we can bring it down even more. Yeah, something like that. Something to just give us a nice little lip here. That's already looking pretty cool. One thing I don't want to keep this too repetitive, so if we go into tile generator, I can possibly do a or a checkered mask, and that'll give us every other one. Yeah, but that breaks it. So it looks like because of these gray values, we're getting the tile generator not giving us the desired effect that we want. So let's go ahead and fix that really quick. So I can tell that the tile generator always works best when it's just a pattern in the middle, but it's mostly, you have kind of the black exterior. So if something like, for example, if we had this guy plugged in, it just gives us a better result. So what we can do is, let's actually do a levels here. And I'm going to bring down this guy. Cool. And then I still want this transform, so I'm just going to do a blend here. And then bring this guy in, okay? Do an edge detect, yep. Okay. See what this is giving us currently. Okay. Let's actually bring this guy up. Okay. What I can do here is I'm going to look at this mask that we have going on here. And I do like the shape it's kind of giving us, but what I want to do is let's actually take this same thing here, do a blend here, and let's start. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. So now we're able to control it just a little bit better here. I'm gonna plug this guy in and see what it gives us. All right. Now it's giving us another kind of trim piece here, which is exactly what we're looking for. But the height offset is just a little too high for what I'm liking. And also, I might want to bring in the bevel on this guy just a bit as well. So just so that's not as intense. Like maybe something like that. I also want to bring up the shape as well, so it covers the entire panel area that we have here. Cool. Let's actually just move this guy up into position a little bit. looks like, where is that happening? It might be on this mask that I have here. So yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. One thing we can do is now that we have our tile generator like we want it, we can actually now utilize the horizontal mask that we were talking about, or sorry, the vertical mask. So now we get one on each side. And I'm going to add a small little detail here just to finish it off for this one tiling pattern. So for the purpose of time on this tutorial, I went ahead and just finished off these extra little tidbits, and then I'm gonna finish off the video with showing you guys how to work on this main large pattern. But for these basic ones, nothing too fancy. So the extra little detail I added here was a nice kind of screw in between the panels so they look like they're interlocked. And to do that, I went ahead and just took the exact same kind of cut lines that we did earlier on this top tile, and then just copied that over, and then I added them in here and just offsetted them a bit so they're not completely the same as the top ones. Then I went ahead and just created a simple bolt. I did a polygon and a bigger polygon. I blended it so we have the little indentation here. I did transform it to move it to the side, and I mirror grayscaled it so it mirrors on the other side. This is a way I like to work, just so it mirrors depending on where I move it on the transform. Then I did a simple shape with a levels and a height blend. That way the bolts are actually higher than the actual metal piece. I did a tile generator that's similar to what we found on this guy when we added the indentations. Or sorry, I did a tile generator that mimics what is happening here, so the actual pieces are aligning with the amount that is being generated right here on the cut lines. So wherever the placement of these cut lines were, it's also showing up on here. So then I just did a blend so they show up just a little bit here. I went ahead and added this guy on here, so just a simple kind of panel. And then I went ahead and did a shape to a trapezoid. Then I flipped it. I added another shape that created a thin line. I blended the two, did an edge detect, then a bevel. Then I used a transform to place it in position to where that panel was, and I just set it on subtract, so we got a nice subtraction here. And for these holes, I just did a tile generator with a disk. I set it to checkerboard. I bumped up the X and Y amount, and then I just did a shape with a transform to a mirror grayscale as a mask to tell it where to actually place these holes. For this guy, I'm just gonna leave it I'm just gonna leave it as is, because sometimes when we're creating our environments, we want something that's not too noisy. So I'm just gonna leave this on here. So in case you wanted to UV it to something that didn't have a bunch of noise and just needed a simple edge, we can go ahead and do that. But our focus for this last part of the video is just working on this main large tile. And what I want to do for this guy is pretty much just give it a cut right in the middle. That way it breaks up the surface, but then we can kind of play on what we can do with this guy. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that exact same tile generator with the cuts. I'm just going to duplicate it. I'm just going to move it over here. I'm going to do a blend, and then I'm just going to offset it, or maybe even set the amount down a bit on the tile generator so we just have one solid line going right through the middle. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. And also let's go ahead and put on subtract. And then I'm going to use the same mask to make sure it's only appearing on that area. So once we have that, we actually have these 4 panels. I might want to take it down just maybe a 1, but we'll see. Maybe let's actually go on the tile generator and let's see what we can do. 3. Yeah, I think this will work just because it gives us enough real estate to play around. So the cool thing about getting these guys up and running was we have the ability to create pretty much tools within Substance Designer to be brought in later on as a single node. Now, this is the one little section I'd like to show you guys. So for example, if we go back to this kind of bolt treatment that we did here, what if we wanted to integrate this and make this into a single just node? That way we don't have to constantly keep copying this graph and just bogging down and making duplicates of the same kind of nodes. We can simplify it into a single node and then just use it accordingly. So to do that, I'm just going to go into our package. I'm going to make a new substance graph. I'm going to make sure it's empty, and I'm just going to call this guy bolt. So once we're here, I'm going to go back into our trim demo. I'm going to copy this guy, and I'm going to open up this guy, set it to, and just paste it in here. The one thing I'm going to do is I am going to copy our height output. That way we're quickly able to create an output of this guy. I'm just going to plug this guy in, view outputs in 3D, and save this. So let's actually save this guy really quick. If we go back into our trim demo, what we can do now is we can completely replace this small graph and just bring in this one single node, and it's going to give us the same kind of treatment that we have currently. So if we do outputs in 3D, there we go. So now we've consolidated the graph into just a little bit more manageable, and now it's a lot easier than going and copying that kind of big graph into just a single node. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this node over here. I'm actually going to add it onto these panels right here. So I'm just going to do a blend here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a transform and a mirror to put these guys where I'd like them to. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. Going to set the tiling mode to no tiling. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend this guy in here, and then let's just go ahead and actually what we can do, let's do a height blend. That way it gives us a little bit more control on the blending of this guy. So once we have it here, I'm just going to go and move it into position where I'd like it to. So let's go ahead and do this really quickly. Move that guy there. Cool. And what I'm going to do is, let's see what a mirror grayscale does. I'm going to see if it gives us what I'm looking for. So it doesn't give me what I'm looking for. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm just going to have to manually place these guys. So just do a blend here, and a blend here, and then I'm going to move these guys into place. So bring this guy down. I'm going to move this guy just closer to this bottom area. And on this guy, let me actually set it to add so we can see both of them. Once we have it there, perfect. Just going to align it a little better. Maybe something, yeah, that looks like it'll work. So I'm just going to plug this guy in. Cool, and now we have the same kind of piece that we do up here. We have it as bottom as well. So let's actually turn on our tessellation. So because the white area might be being extruded a little bit too much, and just as suspected, it looks like it is. So let's actually bring down the height offset just a bit. So maybe something like there. This actually gives us a cool kind of indentation here, but what I'd like to do is let's actually keep it here, but what we can do is on this guy, let's bring in the levels and actually just bring down the whites and see what that'll give us. So I want to see what it's going to give us. Yeah, let's try plugging this guy in and see if that lowers it. And then we can actually go back into here and start playing with this guy. Maybe we can bring down the contrast, opacity possibly. I'm just trying to find kind of a middle ground here. That way it's not protruding too much. So maybe if I bring it down like that, and then I go back to the height blend, and I start bringing this guy up again. Like maybe right there, and then we could bring down the opacity as well. Yeah, that's somewhere pretty nice. Cool. So now, I mean, we're free to pretty much do whatever we want. If we wanted to, we could leave it as is, which could be nice because we have this pretty much this nice real estate here. So if we have a large kind of area or a wall that we just need a UV, it's always nice to have somewhere on your trim sheet to just pretty much have like a blank open space. It's kind of similar to what we did with the bricks, and it gives us a nice area just to have some rest with all this constant noise going on with all the different panels and whatnot. What's cool about keeping the demos pretty much the same layout is, say you UV'd something that with this sort of layout as far as the trims, we can quickly go back to our old demo. So if we go back to this one, and because the object is UV'd exactly the same and the layout is the same, you can quickly change the look of the object that you UV'd. So you can see quite quickly how if we go back and forth between this guy and then we view outputs on this guy, pretty much the layout is exactly the same, and it's a nice way to quickly iterate and get different results just with the same layout. So hope you guys learned something. Make sure to stay tuned on the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.